everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you. I am Floriana Boldojar, and I am a marketing manager at Uptrain, and I am a member of the Impact Hub community, a very proud member of this community, and really happy that they invited me to host this chat with Carlos. This event is called Disconnect to Reconnect, and is part of this series that Impact Hub is doing on this topic of reconnection when we all are sitting at our homes right now. So we hope we find it this useful. I started talking English already because Carlos will talk in English, so just to get you ready with this. I am lucky that I met Carlos like 3 years ago, and meeting him was in a moment when I had some difficulties with my personal life, when I had some issues, some questions. And I was really lucky to meet him. He kind of changed my view about many things in life, and it still helps me going to his classes and hearing him talk. It really inspires me. And I am lucky to consider myself also as a friend of Carlos. So Carlos, welcome.
Thank you, Flori. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. I won't tell very much about you. I would let you introduce yourself. I mean, I think it's best that you tell us a bit about your story. I know you're from Argentina, but you came up to live in Romania. You got to live here. So what's your story in a short way, and what do you do right now?
Yes, very shortly, I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And when I was about 21, I left Buenos Aires. I left to America. It was a decision I made. I wanted to find more than what I was finding in Buenos Aires. I live in America for about 20 years. And then on my way back to Buenos Aires after 20 years there, it's a long story, but I met Alina. And Alina is my wife now. She's Romanian. And kind of a longer story, but we came to live here in Bucharest. And now I have a son. He's 10 years old. He's Argentinian, Italian, Romanian. Also have an Italian passport. So he's also Italian. And I teach a kind of a yoga class here in Bucharest. I'm an author. I wrote a book. And that's the short story.
I consider myself very lucky to have you here in Bucharest as a teacher. So I'm happy you are in Romania. We are right now in like a difficult situation. Let's say most of us are working from home. Our lives have changed in the past few weeks. How has your life changed, and how are you dealing with this?
Well, my life changed in the sense that I don't have any more work. I cannot do the classes anymore because of the restrictions. And so I started to do my classes online, but I decided to do them for free. I felt it was a good way to contribute to the community. I know many people are also in trouble. And also the other thing that changed enormously is that I feel very lucky from one point of view that we moved to the house of the bunici of David. They live in Bușteni. And they have a little nice house close to the forest, so that's wonderful. Having said that, it's not so easy, not at all really, but let's say it's not so easy to live with the bunici. They're wonderful people, but It's not easy. And also I am a kind of, not only that I am from Buenos Aires, not only that I live in America, not only that I teach yoga, but also that I am a bit of the weird one. So I don't know if you hear me well. There was a sign that says that the internet was, is it okay with the internet as far as you can tell?
I hear you well, and I think that the organizers will tell us if they don't hear us. So
Okay.
yes,
Yes, very good. Okay, thank you, Roberto.
So don't worry.
And it's like this whole situation is a challenge, but as in challenges are very good possibilities. So I guess we will talk about this, but it is a very great opportunity to, we can say, to grow, to evolve, to learn, to challenge ourselves. Yes. So that's what changed.
I like the way you view this like a challenge and more than a difficulty. Well, what I experienced and what I have seen other friends and colleagues experiencing is that this challenge also brings a lot of uncertainty about the future. It's also about maybe, I don't know, thinking that maybe we can get this virus or our dear ones can get this virus. What will it happen? Or thinking about the economic crisis. Some businesses are closing right now, or some people are getting fired or receiving less money. And these whole things come with the uncertainty of how long will it last? Will it be back the way it was after this, and when? So it's a lot of uncertainty, and I was wondering, how can we deal better with this uncertainty?
Yes, it is a lot of uncertainty, but the great thing, the wonderful thing, is that now we see that everything is uncertain. And the problem with the way that we've been living up to this moment is that we forget completely that everything is uncertain all the time. There is no certainty in life at all. Never. There was never before, there is not now, and there is not going to be later. It's just that we tend to live in this we live like blind people, marching into a future, into an idea of a future, completely lost in our thoughts, completely lost in our idea, completely lost in our dreams, completely lost in our hopes, completely lost in our desires, completely lost in our needs, and we live marching on without seeing, without having a larger vision that this uncertainty that we feel now, it has always been there. It's just that we've been blind to it. And now suddenly it's like, it comes directly into our face. I mean, in a sense, it's like death. We live completely unaware that we are mortal beings until we feel a death close to us. And then death explodes in our face. And often it makes a dent in our life. When somebody close to us die, we kind of creates a stop in our life. The problem is that for most people, that stop doesn't last very much. And then very soon we come back to the old ways. This is, in a sense, this crisis is like a small death, although many people are dying, and so maybe it's not a small death. But for many people that are not experiencing death so close, like for me, I don't have anybody that died in this thing. So for me, it's not so close to death. But it is a kind of a small death because it's it kind of stops me and makes me look, where am I going? What am I doing? What is important to me in my life? What is truly important in my life? What's happening now? All these questions, although they can be very difficult, they're wonderful questions. They're wonderful because they open our eyes to a reality of life besides these projections into the future. There is nothing wrong with the projections into the future. They are wonderful ways to evolve, to grow, to get new things. But beside this looking into the future, it has to be another look, another vision, which is the vision of now, the vision of what is really true, what is really happening. And that vision, that inner vision, that vision of a larger aspect of life is what we miss. And now with this crisis, we have the opportunity. It's not going to happen by itself, but there is an opportunity to be able to see this other part of life, this other part of ourselves.
Very beautiful explanation. And you said that it's not going to happen by itself. Do you have some,
well,
what can I do, or what can we do to have this larger perspective?
Well, you see, it's like it just came to me, there is this saying about suffering. Suffering can crush you or it can make you grow. It depends. It depends on the way you use what's happening. Suffering by itself doesn't have any power. It depends on what you add to the suffering that will either crush you or it will make you grow. So this is something that to me is very, very important. There is no, the world that we experience outside is not really outside. It seems to be outside, but what we experience is really our own mind. And so this crisis, you can see it as a difficulty, or you can see it as an opportunity. And the crisis in itself doesn't tell you the way you should see it. The crisis is just something that happens in life. It's like life and death. Life and death are neither good nor bad. They are just something that happens in life. It depends on what you put into it. I mean, for some people, to be alive is pain. And for some people, to be alive is the greatest thing in the world. And for some people, the whole idea of death is like is the worst thing that can happen. And for some people, death it can be something else. It depends what you bring into anything. There is no definitions in the world. Nothing in the world. I mean, this is something that is being said in many ways, and I like very much this this phrase from Shakespeare. Is actually in Hamlet, when he says, "There is no good or bad, but thinking make it so." It's only what you think, and so this is an opportunity to see that, not to think that something is bad because it's there. It's bad if you think it's bad. But if you see it as a challenge, if you see it as an opportunity to grow, then where is the bad? It may be unpleasant, maybe it may not be, it's like to be cold. To be cold is not so pleasant, but that's all. You can also suffer because it's cold. You can say, oh, I'm always cold, it's horrible to be where I am, I should move, I should be somewhere else because I'm always cold. But those are all thoughts that you add to the truth, which is, I am cold. And cold is just a sensation. But what do you add to this sensation? There is no world outside. There is only my thoughts that create the world outside.
There is a question that someone asked about this on Facebook today, when I asked people if they have curiosities, and someone said that for the people who live more in our head, in our minds, than in the real world or in reality, or maybe in presence, as you say, what can we do? How can we manage our thoughts and our emotions if we continuously spend most of our attention in our heads?
You know, the thing is that we all live in our heads. Because, I mean, look at the world. If you look at the world, you see it through your mind. So we all live through our minds. The problem is that sometimes our thoughts run so fast that we only see the past. We only see the past, or instead of seeing what is there, we see our conditioning. And so what we need to try to do, we need to try to slow down a little bit and not have so many comments about what we see, to be able to slow down and to find a little bit of silence when we look at the world, to be able to see that there is the conditioning. The conditioning is always going to be talking in my head. By conditioning, I mean my parents, my grandparents, the way that society was when I was a kid, the way my parents treated each other, because the way my parents treated each other is one of the most important in a sense, strongest conditioning that I would have in my head. And the way I see the world is going to be very much conditioned by the way my parents treated each other. And so this, for example, and then also my first experiences, the kind of teachers I had when I was a kid, the kind of society that surrounded me when I was a kid, the kinds of fashions in thinking that was surrounding me when I was a kid. That's my conditioning. There's more than that, but that's, in a few words, that's the conditioning. And when I think without realizing that I'm thinking, what is thinking is my conditioning. And so what I need to do is to try to stop a little bit the movement of my mind, to see, first of all, that there is conditioning there. But then in the silence, maybe also something else can appear. Something else that is more true, more closer to my heart, and not necessarily completely dependent on my conditioning. Just because a thought appears in my head, it doesn't mean that that thought has a value. That's something very important to understand. We have thousands of thoughts every minute. And just because a thought appears in my head doesn't mean that that thought has a true value. One of the reasons for what I call presence, or pay attention to our mind, is the capacity to choose between thoughts. There is a note in my book which I call not all thoughts are created equal. And it's a reference. There is a saying about in America from that. It just means that not all thoughts express the same truth. Some thoughts are closer to what I would say a bigger picture of life, and some thoughts are more closer to a very narrow vision of life. And the narrower the vision of life, the less truth there is in that thought. And the larger the vision of life, the more truth there is in that thought. So to have the possibility to choose between thoughts, that's one of the important things of presence, of having the possibility to create a space in our mind.
I am very grateful in your classes when I get the chance to experience this quiet mind and this space. Usually I have these moments there, but my head keeps thinking and thoughts about the future, about the past, about what I have to do still come up. So it's like a very good practice to be able to find this quiet mind. So I was wondering if you can share a bit more about what are the benefits of having a quiet mind and what does it actually mean?
Yes, I will say that a quiet mind is one of the main things that I try to bring in my classes. And I guess the most important part of a quiet mind is to realize how important it is to have a quiet mind. Like, that's a good question. Why do I need a quiet mind? Yes, one reason is because it feels good. But that's not enough, because many things feel good, and there are other things that feels better and are easier to get. I don't know, to have a chocolate is easier than a quiet to eat a chocolate. You also feel good, and it's much easier than to cultivate a quiet mind. So if it's just to feel good, I'd rather eat chocolate. Or 1,000 other things that are easier to get. Because to get a quiet mind, in a sense, is not so easy. But so one of the most important things is, why do I need a quiet mind? And I already spoke a little bit about it, but it's good to repeat it. The reason why I need a quiet mind is because I am constantly creating my life with my thoughts, with the way I think, with the way I interpret, especially with the way I interpret what happens to me. We are experiencing, there is constantly experiencing of the world. There is not 1 second when there is not an experiencing of the world. But the way I take that experience is through my mind. There is no other way. My mind is the tool through which I contact the world. And the mind is like a, how do you say? It's like a
filter?
Exactly. Thank you. The mind is like a filter. So it's like the mind is like a telescope. If I want to look at the moon, and I cannot look at the moon directly, so I need to use a telescope. And so I look to the telescope. But if the telescope is dirty, if it's not clean, I will not look at the moon the way the moon is. I will look at the moon plus the dirtiness of the telescope. And if I don't know that the telescope is dirty, then I will think that what I see, that the dirt that is in the telescope, I will think that belongs to the moon. And the mind is like a telescope. It's the tool that I have to look at the world. And by the world, I mean everything, including my own body. My body is part of the world. And the way I see my body, like, we think that the body is what we think about the body, but actually our body is only our thought. People have a bad thought about the body. They feel bad about their body, but feeling bad about their body, many people do, it's only a thought in your mind. You don't have to feel bad about your body, but many people do, because of advertising, because of Hollywood, because of the way our society runs, because big companies want you to feel bad about the body. So the more you feel bad about the body, the more you buy things to try to change your body. And the more you buy things, the more you spend money in buying things so you can improve your body. But because the idea that you don't feel good, then no matter how many things you buy, you will always feel bad. But all this feeling bad is only thoughts in your mind. It's only the filter through which we see the world. The body was an example of the world, but other people, situations, what is important to me in my life, all these things are thoughts in my mind. So the quiet mind helps me to be able to think more clearly, more profoundly, more deeply, with a bigger vision. The bigger the vision, the more truth there will be in my thoughts. The bigger the vision, the more possibilities there will be to have a more truthful thought, or as like the old Greeks used to say, to be more in contact with the nature of reality. And so a quiet mind is fundamental to see the nature, to see life, the nature of life, to see what is really important, to see what is really true, as opposed to what I'm supposed to think because society forced me to think in this way or that way, or because of the way my conditioning was, which means the way my parents thought or the way the parents of my parents thought. If the mind, just like if the telescope that I'm looking at the moon is not clean, I will not be able to see the moon clearly. And if my mind is not clean, and clean, by clean I mean, quiet, at peace, with the possibility to have a space in the mind to be able to hold several thoughts at the same time, to be able to choose the thoughts.
That is a very good observation, because I noticed that the first step is to notice you have like an agitated mind, and to notice that you are lost in your thoughts. And this connects to a question we received on Facebook. Someone asked if what can you practically do as a next step after you become aware of this spiral of thoughts? What is the next step? I mean, you first see that they are there in your head. What would be the next step for?
Well, first to see that you have many thoughts, and then to start to choose your thoughts. To start to choose, well, the next step depends on what you need to do. So it's difficult to talk in general about what is the next step, because it really depends on what you need to do. It depends on what is the task in front of you that needs to be accomplished. And so according to that task, then you will respond to it. The difficulty is to respond automatically to what needs to be done. Is to respond without, is to respond with our conditioning instead of respond with our true intelligence. And so first I need to see that I have all this confusion in my mind. And then I don't know, again, let silence talk. Let silence express. Silence is another word for your heart or your higher intelligence, or what is important is not to be reactive.
I think it's a good observation, because I see and hear a lot of people, maybe also in the Impact Hub community, are facing this. I didn't talk to all of them or to many of them that much, but I did interact with people who run small businesses, and they either worry or tend to take decisions in a rush, because it maybe we should take decisions faster. And I think that all these ideas come up. We should do that, we should try that, or we should fire people, or we should close, and I wonder, in this sense, how do you apply this to making decisions? Which are the wisest decisions you can make, and how can you take that space to see the wisest?
You know, I'm not a good businessman, and I think that's the way that many times things are run now, are run without a bigger vision of what am I doing, the impact of what I do will have in the world in general. I think this is a very common thing, and I don't know for sure, and I probably will never know, but there is a possibility that actually this crisis that we have was even directly or indirectly created by our actions, the way we treat the world. There are many theories, and I cannot go into it because nobody really knows the truth of it, and I don't know if we will ever know it for sure. But it is clear that through our actions, through the actions of acting for the benefit of me and my little needs, and me and what my small me and my little like me and my family, or me and my little circle of importance. What is the way I act is what is beneficial for me and my little circle, and then I'm not aware of my action, how they impact on the world in general. And I think most of the way we act now, a lot of the way we act is in that sense. And a lot of these fast decisions are based on what is good for me, what is good in this moment for this thing that I'm doing now. But I don't have a bigger vision of a larger scale of life. What I'm trying to say is that maybe sometimes we do need to take more time to take a decision. And we need to be more aware of the consequences of my actions in a larger scale, not in the little scale of my little needs.
Someone asked us in the chat section, in the questions and answers, what is really true? What is the nature of ourself? I think you like that question.
Yes, I like the question very much, but at the same time, it's a huge question.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, so you mentioned something about this.
Well, how to answer it without going too far. I will say that the nature of ourself is one way to answer that is that the nature of ourself is love. And by love, I mean a sense of connection with all and everything. And so to answer what is really true is anything that takes into consideration the all and everything is closer to truth, and whatever doesn't take into consideration the all and the everything is further away from truth. I seem, because of the way our senses work, I seem to be separated from everything else. I seem to be here inside the body, inside my skin, and it seems that everything else is outside of myself. But that's only a way that I interpret because of the way my senses work. Just like if I see the sun, what I see is a small round object moving up or down, sunrise or sunset. But that's just an interpretation of my senses. And in the same way that I see a sun, I see an object going up or down the sun, and that's not the way things really are. The sense that I have that I am separated from everybody else and everything else is separated from me is only an interpretation of my senses. Just because my senses see it that way, it doesn't mean that that's true. And actually, the nature of ourselves is this sense of being connected with all and everything. And when we start to feel that connection, then our actions will speak based on that connection. The reason why we are destroying the planet Earth, the reason why we are so disconnected is because of that, because we don't feel this connection. We are so lost in our mind. We are so lost in our little heads that we lose connection with this, with the truth of ourselves, which is love. Not love, not love between two people. That's an aspect of it, but it's a very small aspect of it. It's like there is a much larger dimension to love, which is not passionate love, but it's more like a sense of connection with all and everything, with the whole of nature, with the whole of the world.
Thank you. It's really hard to answer these questions, and I know you go much deeper into it in your classes and in your talks, and I highly recommend them, and I also recommend the book. For me, it helped me to understand what you say about this true nature. I mean, you also give some examples there, so I highly recommend to read it.
Which example do I give?
Well, what I connect right now with is about Dharma. And that's the note that came to my mind. And I think in that note, you do give some examples. They don't come up right now.
Well, Dharma is one of these very beautiful words. Dharma is a Sanskrit word. And is one of these words that doesn't have a direct translation into English. There is not an English word that translates into Dharma. But Dharma is something that we miss, most of the time we miss. And one way to explain what Dharma is right action. Dharma is right action, but so what does it mean, the right action? And one way to say it in very simple is simply to see in whatever action I do, what is beneficial, not only for me doing the action, but what is also beneficial in that action for the other person and for the environment in general. So Dharma, from one point of view, is the vision of me, the other person, and the environment in which the two people are acting from. So when these 3 points are taken into consideration, and then I act from that consideration, That's Dharma. So it's not for me, it's not for you, it's not for the environment, it's for the three of us, equally. Or given the circumstances, whatever the circumstances present. Sometimes I can do things that are more necessary for you, then I don't do it for me. Sometimes it's more important for the environment, sometimes it's more important for me. But to try to take the three things into consideration and then act from that bigger vision. That's one definition of Dharma.
Thank you. I connected it to what you said about choosing between the thoughts that are closer or farther away from our true nature. That's why I mentioned it. I would ask also a more practical question we received today on Facebook. Someone asked, what can we do or what should we do in our evenings to separate our office, our work from home office, from our own home space? Like maybe ideas of activities. Is it better to read, to watch TV, to do some yoga, to meditate? I don't know. What would you suggest? Maybe also in the light of what you said earlier about creating this space in our minds.
Well, I would say all of the above, for sure. But I mean, of course, watch your TV and watch your movie and enjoy your TV, enjoy your movie. But do much more than just that. Try to find your alone space. Try to be with yourself. Try to find a moment to just be on your own. For some people, this is a necessity because they are alone and they cannot go out, and so they have to be on their own. But for example, for me, which I am accustomed to spend a lot of time on my own, right now I find it very difficult. I am with the bunich, I am with my son, I am with my wife, and I am with men. I'm spending much more time with people than usually am. And so for me, it's very important to find my own, to try to find my time on my own. And watching a movie is not to find time on your own. Even if you can enjoy your movie, but yes, definitely do some yoga. Not just in the sense of doing yoga for the gym of it, but do the yoga that brings you in, that connects you to yourself, connects you to your own body, connects you to the space. Definitely do some meditation. I recommend very much to do meditation, even for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Just sit on a comfortable chair, look through the window, and try to be with yourself. Not to think about the problem, not to think about the past, not to think about the future, but just simply noticing your own existence. Just just for 1 minute. Just sit back, comfortable in your chair. Sit back. Relax your shoulders. Relax your face. And just experience this moment. Don't go anywhere. Don't try to do something. Don't try to think about what you're supposed to do or not to do, or what may happen in the future or what may not happen. Just notice your breathing, for example. Connect to your breathing. You can close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open. Just connect to your breathing. Notice that you're breathing. When a thought comes into your mind, come back to the breathing. For example, one very interesting thing is that one of the things that this virus does is that it impedes our capacity to breathe. It goes directly to the lungs. And connect to the breathing and see how, be grateful that you can breathe. For example, just because you connect for a moment, you stop for a moment, you start to breathe, and you can connect to the, and just to be grateful that you're breathing. If we are always busy, always doing, always worrying, always planning, always going into the future, remembering the past, we don't have time to be grateful for what we have. And for example, we have the breathing. And the whole issue with the coronavirus is that it takes your breathing away. You cannot breathe. What they are building, what I don't know, in America, the whole problem is that they don't have enough respirators. Isn't it funny that the one thing that now that we have that they don't is that we can breathe, but we don't appreciate it. But why we don't appreciate it? Because we don't take the time for it. We're always thinking about what we don't have and all the things that we should have. And we are afraid of all the things that we can lose. But see what you do have. You have your breathing, you can breathe. It seems like nothing. Of course I can breathe. But you may not.
Maybe that's what this virus wants to show us, to make us more grateful.
Well, but the whole of life is showing us that all the time. I mean, the whole of the, I am 54 right now. Just to think that I lived 54 years of my life, and where are these 54 years? It's amazing how 54 years have passed. And to me, to be 54 is, again, is a reminder from life that it wants me to be grateful for what I have now, because very soon I will not have it anymore. And the capacity to be grateful is very much related to our capacity to be happy, to be at peace with ourselves. And, you know, one beautiful definition of a quiet mind is a grateful mind.
We have around 10 minutes left. If there are more questions, please write them in the Q&A section. If not,
But if not, even if we don't have more questions, or even the few of us that are together, it's fine to be on, I mean, it's fine to keep talking, of course. It's also fine to be in silence for a few seconds. Just to connect to this moment, to be at peace with this moment as it is, without going into the next moment. There is a time to be busy, there is a time to do, there is a time to think about the future, there is a time to plan for the future. And these are very important things to do. But without the possibility to also to notice that this moment is fundamental, because this moment is what I can experience, and my life is my experience. Like, for example, we are always thinking about the future and worrying about the future, but try to touch a future. You cannot. You cannot touch a future. You can only touch this moment. You can only touch a now. And our life is what we can touch. By touching, I mean our experience. our life is our experience, and our experience is only now. There is no other experience. Even if you experience a memory of your past, the memory that you experience is an image that appears in this moment. And that image is not really the past. It's only a small aspect, like a small perfume of something that happened before, but it appears as an image in this moment. So it's fine to be in silence for a few seconds. In your everyday life. Don't fight for being busy. Be busy if you need to, but fight for find a few moments to be on your own, a few moments to be with yourself, a few moments to be with your experience, which is your life.
Someone said, oh, we will take this, and I don't know if we have more time. Please teach us more about how not to react, because even if I practice presence, as the days pass, I notice that my feelings are like a roller coaster.
Welcome to the club. It's a wonderful question, and I promise you, I am a Latin, and as a Latin guy with very red blood boiling inside my body, I know exactly what you're saying. And the most important thing is to see how much suffering we create for ourselves and for other people when we explode into things. It's just like in the 12 steps of alcoholics, the first thing that they have to know is that I am an alcoholic. I have a problem. In this sense also, the first thing that we need to do is we need to see the pain that we create when we explode into situations. Because that will be the force that will give us to not to express the first thought that appears in our head, but to see that there is a depth and there is an intelligence underneath that first thought, underneath that first impulse. The first impulse, most of the time, not always, but the majority of the time, the first impulse is our conditioning, is our suffering, is our past expressing itself. If we were hurt when we are kids, very probably our first impulse is going to be that hurt expressing itself. And when our hurt expresses itself, it's only going to create more hurt for me and for the other people. So it is a long process of understanding that my intelligence, my true intelligence, my wisdom lies in silence, lies in the space in my mind. There is an enormous amount of love and beauty and wisdom and intelligence in the silence of my mind, in the space of my mind. And you know that because the moment that you don't say that thing that you feel like your heart is exploding, you want to say it, because if you don't say it, you feel like you're going to die, but you manage not to say it. And then there is this gratitude. You feel this warmth towards yourself that you manage to control that. And then something more beautiful, something with a bigger vision can come into your mind. There is this saying from the Greeks by Seneca. He's, anyway, for about 2,000 years ago, he says, the most important thing for, I don't remember exactly the quote, but I am paraphrasing a little bit. The more important way to control our negative emotions is by delaying. It just means not to express it immediately, but to have the way to take a few seconds before you say what you have to say. But that takes time, but especially it takes understanding that that's very, very important for you and for your life and for the people around you. Anyway, there are many more things that can be said, but I think
that's a good practical advice from Seneca. Our time is kind of almost finished. So maybe as a closing remark after all you said, I was wondering, how do you spend your days or your evening right now when you're not doing yoga? How do you spend your time?
I read a lot. I brought a lot of books with me. That's one thing that I did. I should write more, but I don't. I think my level of peace in my mind is not at the best place now. So I cannot find my peace to write. I will have to do that, but I cannot. And I try to be as helpful as I can in the house. But still, even when I try to be helpful, I always do something wrong. But I try to be as helpful as I can. And I spend a lot of quality time with my son, and that's, I'm very grateful for that. And I spend quite a bit of time sitting in a chair, just looking through the window, trying not to have too many thoughts. But then thoughts come, and often when those thoughts come, they find kind of useful things to ponder on.
Okay, sounds nice. Thank you, Carlos, for your time and for giving us all these answers and pointers towards a more quiet mind and to acknowledge this presence. We actually, I feel it helps me also to feel better, to feel more at peace, but also in what I do. I mean, it creates more space for the important things. So I do recommend taking time to meditate, to do some yoga, and I do recommend your classes, which are right now for free for everyone online. So thank you very much, and I'm very grateful. I think someone also wrote, is very grateful, and I encourage people who do have more questions to write to you. I think you are open to receive your emails.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Flori. It was a pleasure to speak with you. I really enjoyed it. It was a very good way to spend this time. Thank you very much, Flori, and thank you to everybody. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much.